SwayamPrabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Welcome to today's class. During the last week, we discussed the theoretical basis of resource management, more particularly commons and common pool resource management. In today's class, I will discuss 4 cases pertaining to natural resource management, 2 from the forests and 2 related to the fisheries. As you might remember, common pool resource CPRs are managed or collectively they are shared by a group of people who constitute the resource community. The first case that we will be discussing is a case that was referred to by Zakir Hussain and Ravindra N. Bhattacharya, who looked at the growth of fishermen community in Kolkata. They argued that the CPR research there has been a tendency in the CPR research to ignore the contextual embeddedness of the resource. And the authors define the contextual factors as the dynamic forces which are constituted in the users group: social, economic, cultural, political, technological and institutional environment. They assume that they are of 2 kinds. One is the local and the other one is the remote, which are endogenous as well as exogenous factors respectively. The case study covers a group of 3 water bodies in Bonhugli area of Kolkata, and these water bodies are managed and used by a cooperative that was established in 1947 by the migrants who arrived basically from Bangladesh. Since 16 of the household were fishermen by caste, they took the initiative to form the cooperative in 1972 and officially registered it under the name of Bonhugli Fishermen Cooperative Society in 1974. Currently, there are 72 members, out of which 42 are active, and membership was obtained either through natural succession or through nomination. The cooperative main activity, as the name suggests, was fishing. However, there are boating facilities as well to supplement the income from fishing. There are 4 permanent members, 3 of whom are office staffs, and the 4th member is a peon. They are only salaried individual within the cooperative. The other members are allocated work through regular meeting and earn directly from the activities they are engaged in. There are 2 such activities. First, there are 2 teams of fishermen with 12 members each. Second, there is a task of repairing boats and nets and maintaining the ponds. Sometimes even the income from fishing and boating are not enough. As a result, the members in this case had to work in informal sectors. That being said, the members are eligible to receive a lot of direct and indirect benefit from the cooperative. The sustainability of the water bodies is checked by 2 ways by the member. First, by checking the closing stock or the value of the fish stock by the year end, and this data, however, is not always reliable as there is a scope of manipulation. The second method of checking the sustainability is to rely on the observation of fishes, the changes in the physical feature of which can be indicated or which can indicate the overexploitation of the fishes. Conflict, however, in this case can come or arise because of 2 types. When it comes to cooperative, internal conflicts takes place among cooperative members, whereas external conflict takes place between cooperative members and the neighbors. I will now explain how internal conflict is resolved in these cases. First, when it comes to allocation of work, there is a conflict as to who will undertake which task because the pay is different for each one. Fishing brings in more money, so individuals might be interested in going for fishing, and this conflict is solved by using system whereby tasks are assigned to individual on a rational basis. For example, so a person goes fishing one day and the next day he or she has to take care of the boats. Sometimes when that does not resolve the conflict, the executive council arbitration actually becomes necessary. The second internal conflict arises when people shrink from their responsibility and task. That is, they refuse to do their work that is assigned to them by the cooperative. In some situation, the person gets away with it if there is a secondary job involved. However, there is a certain threshold that must be crossed, failing to which actions are taken against the rule breakers. Now let us examine the external conflicts and how cooperatives solve them. The first external conflict is that of poaching in form of non-members stealing fishes from the water body. To make sure this does not happen, guards are employed for patrolling in the specific area. Sometimes adverse use of the water bodies can harm its residents. This happens due to the bathing and washing of clothes by using the water. It is difficult to take any strict action on this matter as it might aggravate the conflict. Hence, abatement technologies are used to clean the water once it is polluted. After closely examining the cooperative, it is now time to understand how it was a product of its contextual factors. In order to do so, the writers have studied the connection between the cost-benefit analysis that the members undertook within the socio-cultural context. Initially, the water bodies in question were free access state-owned resources. Their use was dotted with rivalry. Since no one bothered to take care of the resource, it deteriorated in nature. Establishment of property right, hence, was the way to go for managing this resource. However, the enormity of the resource and the mixed nature of the community meant that it would be difficult to assign a property right, as no particular group could be held responsible for taking care of the water body. Moreover, there was no way for the resource owners to effectively communicate with each other. In the 1970s, the resource users who had shared similar past experiences came together to manage the resource and form the cooperative with the idea that the benefits in doing so would eventually outweigh the cost that was involved in managing the resource. This was the result of awareness of the potential benefits that accompanied the collective action. However, even though all fishermen in that area came to know about the advantages, only few of them actually took the initiative to form the cooperative. The authors have argued that these choices were dependent on the history and the culture of the members and the larger economic backdrop in which their voices were embedded. These members were migrants who had escaped their country to protect themselves from the political and communal clashes. This also meant that they were on the lookout for the new employment opportunities. The shared lived experiences fostered a sense of we feeling among them. Research by Laudel and others have shown how common threat may increase solidarity, and the fear of losing water bodies, which had become more than just common pool resource, became the turning point for the fishermen or the fishermen community who decided to come together to manage them. Even though the income from the CPR in question are not enough for the families, they still choose to prioritize the contextual factors over the cost-benefit analysis. Moreover, the introduction of the boating facilities is an example of how technology can be used to gain benefits from the common pool resource in a sustainable way. The second case that we will be discussing is based on the study by Loeb and Burks on a small-scale community based on fisheries management. The arrangement here is known as the Padu system, and it has been defined by Panini as the traditional system of granting entitlement to eligible members of a particular community to undertake specific fishing activities in certain designated fishing grounds of the lagoon during specified seasons. The community of Vivekananda Chandrika Dhivara Shabha or the VCDS, particularly the unlicensed stake nets fishers, are subject of the study. They are Hindu caste community based in the Valapadam Island in Kerala. The reason why they have been chosen for the study was because that they follow a community-based management system to regulate the access to the fishing ground and lay down their own rules. The equipment used for fishing is referred to as unniwala in the local language. It is a form of stake net used to capture the shrimp as they swim back into the sea from the estuary. In areas where there are tidal currents, the unniwala is organized in long rows and this arrangement is known as unnipadu. There are total 7 padu grounds for fishing in which 288 stakes net are operated by 126 fishermen. Among them, there are 48 licensed fishermen and 78 non-licensed ones. The latter is divided into three groups and fish on rotational basis on the 3 padu grounds consisting of 144 fishing nets. These groups are part of 3 different sanghams, which means association. Although they are not linked to each other, they share the same techniques for management of fishes and do their fishing in the same water body using the same equipment. However, when it comes to the assignment of the fishing rights, the sangham operate separately from one another. Thus, the fishing communities are using the community-based management system, the sanghams, as an institution to regulate the fishing territory. In the beginning of the 1980s, the first out of the 3 sanghams was created by 21 families of VCDS. They made a stake net row containing 43 unlicensed net. They argued that their right to caste-based occupation when they were taken to court. The other 2 sanghams emerged later and were created Ayapandu containing 31 families and Murugapandu with 26 families respectively. Even though sanghams are technically illegal as they do not have any recognized or recognition from the law, they are registered with the office of the state registrar at the High Court. They are considerably well organized and each sangham contains a president, vice president, treasurer and a secretary elected yearly by the members. The members here have to follow predetermined set of rules in which daily operation meetings are multiple times in a year and they meet to discuss matters that are pertinent to the sangham like the assignment of fishing territories and formulation of rules for managing the resource. The padu system that the sanghams govern have 3 roles. First, to facilitate access according to the needs and the requirement of the resource users. Second, to ensure collective responsibility and action. Finally, to make rules and resolve conflict. Let us look at each one of these roles in detail. The equitable access to resource is ensured through rational basis of fishing. The sanghams have instituted a lottery system using which the access is determined, enabling each group to have a chance at fishing or from the prime grounds. The process of lottery happens on a yearly basis where the members gather to draw lot. The result determines the rest of the year for each fisherman. Within each of the sanghams are present several measures that ensure collective responsibility. Financial support is made available to members who have a loss in the income or family or have to marry off a family member. It also has provisions for donating to temple during the religious occasions. Moreover, the maintenance cost of the stake nets are shared by all members of the sangham. Finally, the sanghams are in charge of resolving conflict as when it arises. It also lays down rules that guide the functioning of the institution. Usually, conflict arises from allocation of fishing territories or the matter of fishing from another fisherman's territory in the event of their absence. Matters are taken to the Sangham level only when it cannot be solved by the fishermen themselves. The Sangham also prescribes some restrictions when it comes to fishing during incoming tide. This is when the shrimps enter the estuaries to breed, a process which, if interfered with, can affect the sustainability of the system. Such action is fined with a formal warning depending on the Sangham. Even though Sangham have local rules and regulation, they fail to create a scope for communication within the three unlicensed fishermen groups. Each Sangham decides its own membership. However, it is unable to exclude unfair appropriation of the resources by members of other Sangham. This has happened mainly due to the lack of recognition in the eyes of the government and the absence of office license or official license. They are not recognized by the licensed group or any of the fishing groups for that matter. Along with the problem of exclusion, subtractability is also a problem, which we have discussed earlier in the classes. In spite of having proper rules in place to prevent overexploitation, the lack of coordination and proper license can result in the long run the loss of common pool resources in question. The third case that I will be discussing today shows traditional communities and how they systematically managed and conserved natural resources since time immemorial. The case study by Van Ast on the Adat institution and the management of Herman Yones in the Indonesian Timor illustrates the role of design principle in sustainable management of common pool resources. The forest management system in the west side of Timor has existed since a long time. However, the rights to regulate and enforce rules have passed on from the hands of one traditional community to the state and back to the traditional community again. The traditional institution of Adat provides rules and regulations for how the Indonesian community members can lead their life. Not only it prescribes the social rules, but also rules related to the physical surrounding. According to the regulation number 39 by 2007 passed by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, the Adat institution refers to social organization which has the objective to conserve and develop the Adat culture based on the traditional customs. Although the state has a strong role in the management of forests, the communities follow the prescription of the Adat system. The community that particular case focuses on is based on the sub-district of Amarasi on the Timor Island, located around 40 kilometers away from the province of Hupang. This area has a tropical forest cover which has rich biodiversity along with the presence of several local species. The community is marked by following characteristics. First, they rely on the forest for their livelihood. Second, there is hardly any engagement with the market economy. Third, ties with the family and community members are considered important in this case. And finally, they believe in the Adat institution and the factor who is the leader of that area. The factor's advice is taken in the case of conflict that arises for managing this resource. Now that I have given you a brief idea about the community, I will discuss how the design principles given by Ostrom, which we discussed in the earlier class, can be used to analyze the forest management system under the Adat institution in Indonesia. Ostrom's first principle states that the boundaries of both the resource and the resource users should be stated in clearer terms. In this case, the Grand Forest Park of Herman Yones is the resource and the community of people that stay in its vicinity and manage it are the resource users. In this case, the boundaries have been drawn according to the Presidential Decree number 80 by 1990. However, it covers the traditional domestic quarters of the Amarasi tribe. Since the Adat rule do not provide any idea of the boundaries, the decree is adhered to as it gives collective ownership to the entire community. Forest produce are off limits and there are restrictions on any activities related to farming and burning within the forest area. The members can utilize their own yards for this purpose. The members can also use timber and other forest produce for their personal use, such as in form of building materials for construction. However, prior permission in this case must be obtained from the leader of that area, and to compensate the loss of tree, similar amount of trees must be planted. Let us now move to the second design principle, which states that the rules surrounding the management of a natural resource must fit the local environment of the resource. As mentioned earlier, the community members strictly follow the Adat laws. The two justifications given by them in this regard are: first, following the same rules lead to the fair result when it comes to harvesting it or the harvesting unit from the flow. Second, the Adat rule has existed since times of the ancestral members of the community. The local legend is that there will be spiritual punishment for exploitation of forest resources. The third design principle states that the resource users who are affected by the rules regarding the governance of the resource must be allowed to participate in the alteration of those rules. The way in which the Amarasi tribe engage in the management of forest indicates that third principle is at work. The members do so by following two ways. First, by participating in the monitoring of the resource through the activities undertaken by the Adat institution. The members do so in the following two ways. First, by participating in the monitoring of the resource activities undertaken by the Adat institution. Second, the government organizes counseling programs through which it aims to address conflict resolution mechanisms. All members are invited to these sessions and it gives them a chance to modify the rules. There is, however, very little chance of the members actively seeking the change in the rules, since they have been passed over through the multiple generations. Moreover, the willingness to change the prevalent rules may be perceived as a challenge to the leaders. The fourth principle is related to monitoring the resource as well as the user. Under this, there are acts of monitoring itself as well as accountability of the community members for their actions. The members take their monitoring responsibility very seriously. Acts of destruction along with identity or identifying the culprit are conveyed to the leader. Local government officials and forest officials also stay alert regarding these illegal activities. A chain of command is followed in this matter. Initially, after a member witnesses an illegal activity, they report it to the head of the village, who in turn reports the matter to the community leader. The latter passes on the information to the government officials, and together they try to pinpoint the offender. This shows that there is a partnership involved between the community members and the agents of the government in managing the resource. We have reached the fifth design principle, with meting out appropriate punishment for the offence. The rules stipulated by the Adat institution are based on the monarchy system of Amarasi. In non-serious cases, offenders are usually served with a written warning by the leaders and are allowed to go on the condition that they will not repeat the similar kind of offence. When matters are serious, such as large-scale felling of trees, the offenders are surrendered to the legal system of the Indonesian government. The sixth principle or the mechanism of conflict resolution come in handy during a day-to-day activities as well as to resolve the conflict. Mostly the conflict over ownership of land between families, sometimes there are instances of illegal felling. The mechanism to resolve conflict involves participation in meeting that is supervised by the leaders. This system has been established as a fail-proof over time. Under the seventh principle, which is recognition of community members, the right to organize, has been officially sanctioned by the government of Indonesia as per the United Nations 1992 resolution of recognizing indigenous cultures and traditions. Hence, the community members have the right over management of forest and use of resources obtained from it. This gives them a certain level of assurance that they have rights which cannot be easily overturned even by the government. Finally, the 8th design principle talks about the nested enterprise, which implies the governance of resource from bottom up in an interconnected way. In the Grand Forest Park area, the rules and the sanctions have been institutionalized in such a way that they are considered as an arm of legal system in Indonesia. Even the Adat institution can be seen as a subset of the government, since many members work for both the institution and the government. According to them, the Adat laws take precedence when it comes to issue related to the forest. In conclusion, this case is very good example of how traditional management systems has characteristics which have only been studied relatively recently in theories related to sustainable management of natural resources. The age-old institution has survived because of the historical ties, the social obligations, and the authority obtained from its place within the Indonesian governance structure. The fourth and the final case that I'll be discussing in today's class shows how successful common pool resource management by a community might not end in equal benefits for the all resource users. The case at hand is that of the study done on the systems of joint forest management by Sanjay Kumar in Jharkhand area. The author points out through this case that how joint forest management has been successful in promoting the sustainable management of forests. However, the achievement comes at a cost. It is the poorer sections of the community who pay a price in this case. The joint forest management was constituted to put an end to the rapid deforestation of the forests that were state managed before and after India's independence. It was found that the local community members were not proactive about preserving the forest, as a result of which they had turned into de facto open access regime, resulting in uninhibited exploitation by the insiders and the outsiders. The Indian National Forest Policy of 1988 stated that the management of forest could be successful only if the local communities were involved. As part of this policy, the joint forest management was implemented by all states to conserve forest as well as to alleviate poverty. The joint forest management, there was devolution of rights to manage, protect and develop forest and forest resources from the state to the local communities, who would organize in form of the cooperatives or the committee at the panchayat level. Joint forest management also mentioned how benefits derived from these forests, once they had been regenerated, would be shared among the resource users. The case study is based on 5 villages located in the Ranchi district of Jharkhand. The forests in this area are managed by the forest department along with the participation of the local community members. In Ranchi, the joint forest management was a part of resolution taken by the Bihar government. According to it, there should be a village forest protection and management committee, or the VFC, which will contain an adult member from each of the household having rights over the forest. There can be maximum of 18 members and the secretary is usually a local forest official. The chairman and other members are all local villagers. Together, they are in charge of looking after the protected forest. Villages in the study of Ranchi have traditionally looked after the forest and derived forest resources based on the local rules. This service has been rendered by them voluntarily even before the implementation of the VFCs. Hence, the joint forest management arrangement in Ranchi is akin to that of the system of community forest management, or the CFM. In these forests, the sal trees or Shorea robustas occupy more than half of the surface area and are prized for their wood. The tree is hardy and can bounce back once all interferences have been removed. Moreover, openings in the canopy of sal tree makes it possible for various species to grow on the ground. They are known as non-wood forest products or NWFP and are valuable to many people, especially the poorer section. Example of such resources include oil seeds, edible fruits, staple food, vegetable, alcoholic drinks, and so on. In dry areas where sal trees have been vigorously exploited, the ground cover is dominated by thorny shrubs which provide fruits and even low quality fuel wood. However, in areas where sal plantations are protected by the Joint Forest Management Committees, the species valuable for NWFP fail to flourish as light fails to enter through the thick shawl canopies. Since the first half of the 20th century, biotic degradation has led to the loss of viable germination options for the non-sal species, which has led to the dominance of the sal trees valued for its timber. Second, the local villagers denote the wood derived from the sal as good timber and that derived from non-sal species as the bad timber. As a result, there is willingness to protect the good timber and use the so-called bad timber for daily use. As a result, there is willingness to protect the good timber and use the so-called bad timber for the daily usage. This, however, is a reflection of the mentality of the elite farmers. The VFCs mostly comprise of the elite members who further restrict the growth of the NWFPs by putting high premium on cutting of sal trees. As the sal trees proliferate, the non-sal species do not receive adequate sunlight required for their survival. Moreover, the VFCs allow forests to be open for access only for a particular day in a year. This further hurts the chances of poor at accessing the NWFPs. The author concludes that it cannot be assumed that all participating resource users will benefit equally in this case. The current joint forest management arrangement favors the rich at the expense of the poor and might not be a good idea for sal dominated areas where there are chances that the needs of the rural elite will be met through the long term stocking of the timbers. Through these cases, I have presented the different scenarios in which natural common pool resources are governed in the field by the resource community. In the next lecture, we will look at how man-made resources are governed and if and how arrangements differ from that of the natural resource management. Thank you for listening and have a great day ahead.